education system in the United States is just garbage. And we don't teach scientific literacy. We absolutely do not teach information literacy, which leaves so many people unprepared for how to deal with the absolute mass quantity of information that pours into your brain if you have one of these little devices. And so, which nearly everybody does now. And so they're not prepared to live in a world where if you want to know something, you Google exactly what you want to be told is true.
Phrost, I love the tagline of your site, which is, since people want to know, working tirelessly to combat misinformation, fraud, and nonsense in the science, health, and fitness industries. But I first heard of you through the martial arts end of things, especially your relentless forum, which was tracking down martial arts frauds and exposing them. And it was beautiful to watch. And so how you're juggling misinformation in the martial arts spaces as well? Why don't we start there first? What's your connection to the martial arts?
Back in 2002, I had just started doing MMA, and I had bumbled into a group. Actually, the history of the site goes back to the old Abu Dhabi Combat Club forums, way in the early days. I think MMA wasn't even like the UFC wasn't even like broadcast on pay-per-view at this point, or it had just started. And so some hardcore fans were just talking about the sport, and the ADCC forums were like an early version of the Sherdog forums, and like it was all sort of a small community of the same people on every website. But we were talking about some subject that was a little bit controversial, and the site admin came in and just shut it down completely. So we were like, you know what? We need our own space where we can do this, and we're not going to be censored by the good old boy network that wants to, shut down topics and this kind of thing. The early form of cancel culture, I guess. I don't know, whatever. But I was working as at the time as a network project manager in Silicon Valley, and it took me all of like 10 minutes to fire up a website with a forum and get that going. And then just people started pouring in, because short of anything like illegal or just like not safe for work content, that kind of stuff that you don't need on a forum, it was all in no holds barred. Anything goes. And discussions got pretty rough pretty quick, and took on the flavor of just calling bullshit on everything. At the time, we were McDojo.com. So we were calling out the McDojos, the strip mall karate clubs where, congratulations, here's your black belt because your mom's check, cleared. So that was the approach that we were doing. I think some people were going after some of the quirkier figures in the martial arts community and stuff like that. But over the years, we changed to Bullshido because McDonald's Corporation came after us for that. Like, seriously, I had several phone calls with their IP lawyers, and I was like, okay, you know what? I've been using this word for several years now, just to call bullshit, because Bullshido, bullshit, Bullshido. I think the origin of the term went back to that video game, Bushido Blade. And then that's not here or there. It's not really that important. But so I was just like, oh yeah, I'm going to bring up my Bullshido Blade while you must call. Anyway, it's just trivial. But so we're like, okay, well, let's just call it Bullshido because it's perfect. The combination of Bushido and bullshit and martial arts. And so we the community started growing by leaps and bounds, because at the time there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, forums were the way people interacted online. Yeah. This is even before MySpace. So the forums were where you wanted to be to have a conversation with anybody across the internet. And Bullshido was one of the websites that was sort of on the darker end of the web. We're basically like a sister site to somethingawful.com. I actually knew Low Tax, the late Low Tax now, who founded that site back in the day. Just sort of the OG internet kind of trollish, anything goes behavior online. But we eventually grew up. A lot of the people that started out on that site, one of them's actually one of the biggest trolls on Bullshido from like way back in the day, is now a full-fledged attorney. And he's actually joined our board of directors. So, and then I won't name another one, but he's a pretty prominent member of the jiu-jitsu community. And he's a black belt, just one of the more level-headed, smart guys. I'm not going to name him. He was a moderator on the site and was pretty infamous for, for his techniques of interacting with people. So, like I said, I
That
won't name
wasn't
him.
That wasn't Grandmaster Shen by any chance, was it?
No, I really don't want to name him because he's a great guy. He's super level headed, and the guy that he grew up to be was, a lot more of a. I mean, I respect the guy so much. Anyway, and then even Joe Lozon, UFC fighter, was one of the moderators on the site. So it was a tight group of people. We've got from his first fight with Jens Pulver. If you go back and watch the old footage, you'll see on the back of his shorts. So it's like Bullshido right there. Because we helped sponsor him back when you could sponsor a fighter for under like freaking $1 million or whatever. And so before Reebok and all that.
Whatever ended up happening to the Condom Depot patches that went right across the fighter's ass. That was classic.
That was great. I mean, that was just a way to root out all the homophobia in the sport. So that was just a topic of discussion. It was great. I fully supportive of that. But I mean, those are the old days when people are still catching on to that thing. And I mean, I would like to take a lot of the credit. I mean, Bullshido organizationally would like to take credit for shifting the topic from what people expected, the old ninja kung fu, like all this hokey stuff and martial arts, like believing in that. Cause I mean, we're all children of the 80s and 90s and the Steven Segal and the Jean-Claude Van Damme movies and stuff. And the public thought that was what fighting looked like. Yeah. And when we're, the people that had trained in actual martial arts, full contact stuff, like we did, we're like, no, that's not it. But I mean, the UFC and MMA really took a lot of did a lot of the work for us. Yeah. So in showing people what real fighting looks like, it's not the choreographed nonsense and the, I take turns fighting, one guy at a time kind of thing. It kind of ends up looking like kickboxing or wrestling in some, to simplify it.
Fighting one guy at a time. Wasn't there a recent Jean-Claude Van Damme movie where he breaks into a warehouse and there's like 10 guys and they all run and attack him and they say, "Stop! Remember, attack them one at a time." Yeah.
I believe that. Yeah. I mean, that guy's trajectory is okay. I mean, I have some sympathy for Jean-Claude Van Damme because he got his break in martial arts by playing one of the biggest fraudsters of all time in a completely bullshit story that was pitched as a true story. And I'm talking of Frank Dukes, the guy who just made up that whole Kumite nonsense that was in, what was it, Bloodsport? Mm-hmm. Yeah. None of that ever happened, of course, and I think he's still got like death threats out against us, but whatever, man, just fade into the distance. But I mean, Jean-Claude Van Damme isn't as bad as Segal, who that guy, don't get me started.
No, I mean, I know, I can't reveal names, but I do know somebody who ran a school with Steven Segal. I think Segal taught Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm making this up. And the other guy taught Tuesday, Thursdays, Saturdays, and called him the worst human being he had ever interacted with. And which is a strong claim. But in recent years, I mean, despite having bought Buddha status, I don't think he's done much to dispel that title, that dubious title.
Yeah.
Did you guys go after celebrities?
Sexual assault.
Yeah.
I mean, not directly. It was like we would discuss things like the infamous brown pants incident with judo Jean LaBelle, which, I never tire of telling that story, but I think everyone in the jiu-jitsu community knows about it.
No, they don't.
Won't rehash that here.
No, please.
What?
Go ahead.
Okay, so
a lot of people don't even know who Judo Jean LaBelle is. So who is Judo Jean LaBelle?
That makes me viscerally angry because Jean LaBelle is one of the
there's a high turnover. There's a high churn rate in the sport.
That I keep forgetting that, and then I see a video on TikTok because I don't have TikTok, but it percolates through of somebody doing some crap that we debunked years, like decades ago now. And so, yeah, you're right. It is a churn and it's rehashed. So Steven Seagal, apparently on the set of one of his 3-word movie title movies, Hard to Kill, Mark for Death, I Am Lame, whatever. Jean LaBelle, like legendary stuntman, it's been doing it, was in the stunt industry since Bruce Lee, just on the set in the background. You can even see like him in things like Reno 911, just because that guy always loved to work. It's just Hollywood mainstay would be the guy that get thrown off a building or whatever. And so he was on the set of one of Steven Seagal's movies, and Steven Seagal was bragging within earshot of that fact that nobody could ever choke him out. So Jean LaBelle, being this like judo, basically a grandmaster, I don't know what his actual rank was, but again, legendary judo.
He was
dude.
tough enough to wear a pink gi. So that you don't need to know what rank his belt is. He was tough enough to wear a pink gi 20 years ago before homonormativity took over the world.
Yep, before people would, just be like, okay, whatever, man, it's your color. But yeah, so Gene LaBelle overheard it and said, okay, let's try this. And, a rear naked choke is a rear naked choke. If you get it sunk in by somebody that knows what to do, there's not too many ways out of it. And especially somebody that really knows what to do. So Gene LaBelle sunk it in on Steven Segal. And as the story goes, it's been confirmed by several people over the years, but just there was basically a lawsuit or threat of a lawsuit involved to keep people from discussing it. Shat his pants. Just had a complete toddler diaper blowout and on the set. And just I'll sue you if you talk about this ever. And, it eventually got talked about because that's how things work. So, yeah. And, 20, 30 years later, he ended up giving up his American citizenship and moving to Russia because he's BFFs with Putin.
Well, he's just a lover of freedom, apparently.
Yeah.
So how then did you make the pivot? I mean, right now the sort of the mandate of the site, and if you go listen to your podcast, it's pivoted to we'll call it the target-rich environment of sort of the science, health, and fitness space.
Yes.
The forum is still. Go ahead.
No. I was going to say about 10 years ago, we started to notice a trend online, not just it's sort of two intersecting trends of the fact that most people have a good idea of what real martial arts look like, contact sports. I mean, the UFC, mixed martial arts, fighting in general, people that train actively with resistance. And we didn't need to fight that fight anymore as much. And it just kind of became sad cherry picking of people that some of them probably have legitimate mental health problems and, are just desperately flailing out there for some kind of validation or, just somebody, some self-respect or something. And so we basically could have flown a mission accomplished banner and said, okay, we win by default because it's only the wackiest of the wackies that are out there doing that. And so, but we had always kind of kept an eye on things like supplements and extreme claims, dieting, hokey stuff. And I personally am a huge, huge admirer of guys like James Randi, the late James Randi, and Penn and Teller and the skeptics community in general. So while Bullshido was working on that, we were sort of our own wing of the skeptics movement, just specific to martial arts. But that movement kind of tapered off, around the same time. We were like, people need to step this up because what had become social media, the Facebooks, the Twitters, it was just exploding and people were interacting more and more online with questionable content, dubious things. You were seeing guys the rise of people like Food Babe and David Avocado Wolf, just, learning how to manipulate the algorithm by sharing all these empty platitude memes is who would give up all modern society, go live in the forest with some, healthy mushrooms or whatever. And that kind of thing. But he would mix that in with weird anti-vax stuff or questionable health claims. That guy in particular was one that claimed, what was it? Chocolate was an octave of sun energy. Just ridiculous nonsense.
Oh, that's good because if I have a weakness, it's chocolate. So I'm glad to see I'm attuned to sun energy.
You can absorb the sun energy through your Mars bar, but I just, and then, Food Babe was one of the ones, and I think she's fallen off lately. She's at, she was big on Facebook, and then Facebook is not what it used to be, but, was the one that drove the whole fear campaign about, what was it? The Subway sandwiches had the bread had the same ingredient as yoga mats or something. Just that sort of thing is a complete ignorance of how nutrition works and how modern foods are made. And there are reasonable concerns about nutrition things and additives and processed food, but the idea that if you can't pronounce a word in the ingredients that you shouldn't eat it. You shouldn't put it in your body. That has nothing to do with whether or not something's good for you. That has to do with whether or not you've actually had some kind of education.
Well, I think years ago, there was a girl in the States for her science project, got everyone to sign a petition against dihydrogen oxide.
Dihydrogen monoxide.
Yeah.
Yep, that's
And
exactly
pointed
where I
out
was
that
going with that.
dihydrogen oxide or hydrogen monoxide is in every pesticide. It's in every cancer tumor. It's everyone who's ever drank it, everyone who's ever had it in their body has died over a sufficiently long period of time. And of course, it's water. And if you understood basic chemistry and weren't intimidated by the word, hydrogen monoxide or dihydrogen oxide, you would go, this is water. And I think she won her science fair project by getting thousands of names on her petition against, to ban hydrogen monoxide.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. I mean, people, you're up north, but here, I mean, obviously this percolates across the world because of, we're the 800-pound elephant in the room. But the education system in the United States is just garbage. And we don't teach scientific literacy. We absolutely do not teach information literacy, which leaves so many people unprepared for how to deal with the absolute mass quantity of information that pours into your brain if you have one of these little devices. And so, which nearly everybody does now. And so they're not prepared to live in a world where if you want to know something, you Google exactly what you want to be told is true.
Right.
And all of these things. If you don't like
the answer, you go to DuckDuckGo.
Yeah. Or if you don't want anybody to know what you're looking for. But I love that website, though. I use it all the time. I've got my browser program to use DuckDuckGo because, I don't need Google knowing that I was looking for, foot itch cream at 3 a.m. or something. But, so we identified that was going to be a growing problem. And then we started transitioning to covering more of those things that overlap with the martial arts, with how, with what our audience was concerned about in general. And, supplements, the supplement industry is unregulated. A lot of guys that are into jujitsu especially are swindled by freaking chiropractors, which is a pet peeve of mine because that is some hokey nonsense. But, you tell people that, I was like, they swear by them because they've had only positive experiences. Their back pain has been relieved and that sort of thing. And like, yes, they have, but chiropractors have literally killed people and put people in, and paralyzed people. And they're doing like neck cracks on infants. And they think that they can cure cancer. And the entire thing was made up by a con artist who said he learned all his skills from talking to a ghost. People don't know those things. And so the more that we interacted with that sort of sphere of the internet, the more we realize, holy shit, that it's fun to make fun of the guy that pretends he can fight off a guy with a gun or, all those hokey nonsense guys. But these people are actually hurting people. They're getting people hurt. They're getting people killed. And, they're stealing money. They're grifting off of people's ignorance. And people are unprepared to defend against that, which is why we kind of, we shifted things. We changed Bullshido instead of just bullshit in the martial arts to be more like we've been calling it the art of self-defense against bullshit.
Yeah, I think there's a real problem. Like one of the huge attractions of call it the reality-based martial arts or the martial arts which pressure test, be that jiu-jitsu, boxing, Thai boxing, judo, sambo. We don't talk about sambo. The martial art formerly known as sambo, where you could go and test something, right? Back when I did kung fu in my teens, you were told that this was a way to drop someone to their knees. You were told that this was a way to stop an attack. You were told that this was a way to break an arm, but you could never test it. So you could never be sure. And being semi-skeptical, it's like, well, how do I really know this other than getting in a fight and trying this? And then I still only have a data point of one. It either worked or it didn't work. And the beauty of jiu-jitsu, or the beauty of judo, or the beauty of contact martial arts, is that you can very quickly figure out what worked. And you figure that out through personal experience, which works great for martial arts. You go and train with somebody, you think you've got an unstoppable leg lock, and they laugh at you, and they crush you, and they choke you, and you do that 10 times, and it doesn't work any other times. You probably don't, unless you're trying it against a guy who's 10 times your level or 10 times your size, you probably have a bullshit technique and back to the drawing board. And that feedback loop is a thing of beauty. But the trouble is, when you move over to health claims, or when you move over to fitness claims, it's much, much harder to proceed intuitively. You can't I mean, to pick my personal hobby horse, you can't proceed into, like, anecdotal data is the worst, and you can't intuit whether or not you need a vaccine. You can't intuit whether or not your blood pressure is high. You can't intuit what your blood sugar is. I'm a very intuitive person, and I just feel that this makes me feel better. And your fucking blood sugar is 20, and you're doing damage to all your organs, or your heart is the arteries in your heart are slowly closing as your Liver King diet is killing you. The feedback loop is so long, right? I eat nothing but bacon for a year and I drop dead 10 years from now. You can't do that experiment 1,000 times the way you can in boxing. And so the information literacy is really the only answer, I think.
I agree. And that's one of the things we sort of, if we look at it from the perspective of, this is a great analogy that I use, is vaccinations. We can inoculate people against just bad information if you just teach them this basic set of skills to look for. Obviously, you look for the cognitive biases and the thinking traps and the sort of things that people get caught up in, looking for, trying to confirm what they believe is true, or instead of having a broad idea of, okay, I'm going to go into this trying to find out what is true, irrespective of how I feel about it. Yeah. Because our intuitions are, frankly, like you pointed out, garbage. We are optimized. The human race is optimized for a lifestyle that involves living in tribes of 10 to 50 people on the African savannas, or the wilderness all around the world. We're not optimized for living in the modern world that we live in. So, like, an intuitive diet, for example, would be one. Yes, I absolutely need to get all these carbs. Anything that's sweet is rare in nature. So I'm going to go run around, like, I'm going to eat the crap out of this because I don't know when I'm going to see it again. But now that intuition that served our ancestors is not applicable to the world where you can just, like, go to the grocery store. You don't even have to walk there. You can just drive. You don't even have to get out of your car, and you can get, like, whatever you want, all the calories in the world. And your intuition is still telling you, because our brains haven't caught up to our bodies or our evolution, and that your intuition is telling you, okay, eat that ice cream. It's got it's got carbs, it's got a little bit of protein, whatever. It appeals to you. The cone's got a little bit of salt on it, whatever. Those are, or the pizza with all the sugar, the fat, the salt. Those things your body craves. So we're nowhere near. It's a mismatch. The actual proper term is evolutionary mismatch, and we're optimized for an environment we're not cognitively prepared to live in. And so that's another thing people need to have explained to them in stark terms. And it's hard if they don't have the background to understand all these interlocking pieces that get us there. The fact that, we're still, a lot of human behavior is the product of, like, the evolution of our ancestors, and that's what got them to the point where we are today. But we're so much further than them. So there's going to be things that aren't matched perfectly to the environments that we find ourselves in, which is, that's the root of so many problems, the nutrition problems, the even mental health, a lot of the stuff that we're not optimized to live like this.
No. So if you're looking at, as you said, inoculating people against bullshit and inoculating people against misinformation, what are the primary areas that you would do that in? Say you had control of the educational curriculum. You could teach every kid in the States an hour a week for a year. That had to be part of Frost's curriculum of bullshit inoculation and data or information literacy. What would be the prime pillars of that?
There's I wrote a piece a couple years back about, like, cognitive razors, like what is it? The one that everybody knows is Occam's razor. There's also I think that one is great to explain things at a certain level, but once you start dealing with more complexity, it breaks down, because the universe is complex, and simple answers. People simplify Occam's razor to the point where it's useless, because a lot of the answers aren't simple. There's so many interlocking pieces. Causation doesn't happen by single factors. It happens, multivariate. So, but I mean, like things like that. Like my favorite is, of course, it was never really formally labeled a razor, but I call it Sagan's. Carl Sagan, his maxim that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And if you can just instill that one piece of things into everybody's head, that one little lesson above everything else, then okay, fine. Well, it'll sift through so much nonsense and BS. But you can't just leave it there because it's not good enough. What is evidence? Again, anecdotes. Are anecdotes evidence? They're data points. Sure. If you get tens of thousands of anecdotes, then you can, adjust the data and look at that and say, okay, maybe there's something there. But on their own, they're not evidence. It's like I was trying to cross the street one day and truck came and I think it felt like I jumped like 20 feet in the air to avoid the truck. I mean, okay, that's your anecdote. This probably didn't happen the way you remembered it, because our brains are not they're not cameras, they're not recorders. We don't experience things, we don't remember things perfectly. So anecdotes are absolutely not evidence, but in the aggregate they can be data points. So you have to explain all these concepts difficultly and to people who in great numbers, the absolute majority, I would argue, want simple answers, because for one, they're not trained to think in complicated terms, but honestly, for two, the average person doesn't have a lot of time to parse all this stuff. There's so much out there. They don't even have time to like research all the stuff they want to do. If you want to build something, you're going to read an article, or you're going to sit through a YouTube video where they spend the first 20 minutes of it talking about their hobbies or what they had for breakfast or something. So it's really hard to get good information without having been trained and how to find good information and how to parse good from bad information. So
I have mixed feelings about Noam Chomsky, but he had one excellent point, which is people are capable of much more complex thought than we give them credit for. Just look at how knowledgeable the average person is about some hockey draft or football draft. And they know every detail of every player, where he was, how much he was paid last year on this team, and why he went to that team and this team. I'm already outside my depth. I don't follow this.
I don't know how hockey works.
Throw ball games.
Yeah.
But like sports ball. They optioned this guy, and they this guy's bound by a contract and blah blah blah. That's pretty complex. And if people can figure that out, they actually have capacity for fairly complex reasoning. But, thanks to the bread and circuses, they're worrying about sports and the ins and outs of the latest American Bachelorette show, or Bachelor in Paradise. Yeah. Oh my God, there's like these 4 girls and they all want this, and this one's got bigger boobs, but this one makes more money, but this one's a blonde. And
I honestly can't even blame a lot of people that are like that, because our culture doesn't esteem broad knowledge. Maybe it's shifting a little bit, because the younger generation is great. I have the Zoomers. I have nothing but love for those guys. They're coming up. They're so well informed on so many different topics. So, and maybe their attention spans aren't as great because they're watching like 9-second TikTok videos or whatever. But some of them are just so well informed, much more than I was at that age. But a lot of people just don't have. If you're working 50, 60 hours a week in a miserable job and you're coming home tired, you don't want to sit there and learn, read Wikipedia unless you're a weirdo, which, some people are, like I am, but you don't want to read that. You want to just do something that's fun. You want to enjoy a little bit of your life before you freaking die. So,
sure. So, but that does create a bias towards a simple narrative.
Yes.
All big pharma is lying to you. Every government in the world is working with big pharma, and somehow, if you dig deep enough, leftist billionaires, the Jews are behind it. That's a pretty simple narrative to explain the state of the world.
And it appeals to so many, innate biases of your own. It validates you for believing it, because then you have a little bit of an edge on everybody else, because you feel special knowing something that other people don't. Oh, they're all sheep, and I'm the sheepdog or whatever. I know I'm part of this inside crew. I'm not just this random guy with a sad life, that doesn't have a girlfriend or whatever. And that sort of thing appeals.
So how would we weigh, I mean, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, which then brings us to what is evidence? So we can agree that anecdotal evidence is the lowest form of evidence. I don't think we're definitely not the first people to point that out. This is pretty much widely accepted in epistemology. But then how do we judge other evidence? Because, I mean, I just presented something at the fire department about improving ventilation at the fire halls to prevent COVID transmission. And the response from a bunch of the guys was, man, you can just find a study to say anything you want. So, yeah, you've got studies. I mean, I'd put together 4 pages of references to, to like fringe journals like Nature, Science, Cell, British Medical Journal, and The Lancet, right? The very best scientific journals in the world. But if you wanted to Google, you could find some alternate counter-narrative evidence. So people have, they don't, judging quality of evidence is a huge problem. So how do you teach people to judge quality?
You have to, I mean, honestly, this is where formal education makes a huge difference. And it galls me that people don't have access to just take a class as an adult that requires you to cite your sources and that has a professor that's actually checking those sources and saying, you should not link to Natural News or, or Mercola or whatever, all those weirdos that just make crap up. That is not a valid thing. So nobody teaches that.
Joe Rogan Experience, Alex Jones episode.
In APA format, you're citing it, episode 7,952 or whatever he's on. I've actually listened to some Joe Rogan episodes. I had him on my podcast feed for a while. And I mean, about 10 years ago, 8 or so, it wasn't so bad. He'd have people like Neil deGrasse Tyson on, and, Richard Dawkins and people that are legitimate experts in certain things. And then it just sort of, he found where the sweet spot was to get the listeners. And that's controversial crap, the counter, the contrarians, the Brett Weinsteins and all the guys that are grifting off of what people want to believe. And so
heterodox thinkers they prefer.
Yeah. Heterodox. Yeah. You know what? I think there's some good stuff for the heterodox. I think there's an actual heterodox academy that, I mean, they're a mixed bag, but they're not all the Weinsteins and stuff. They're not like that University of Austin they're trying to start up.
Let me just do a shout out to another guest who's been on my podcast, Kevin Bass, who's doing his PhD and his medical degree at the same time. And he posted something today. Huh? Yeah.
I think I caught that episode. Yeah.
Thank you. So his quote is, to become famous as a health influencer, you have to say something new. The easiest way to say something new is to say something wrong. Correspondingly, the majority of famous health influencers systematically say things that are wrong. Sadly, it's how the system works. And that's like if, Rogan isn't having very many people on saying, look, wow, 99% of doctors think that vaccination is the bloody answer. Like, you go get vaccinated for anything. Forget COVID. Get vaccinated for measles, mumps, and rubella. Vaccinate your kids give them the MMR vaccine. 99% of doctors agree. But you don't get famous by saying, hey, do what everyone says you should do. You get famous for being the one guy, the Andrew Wakefield, like, vaccines cause autism. Or, forget all this modern nutrition stuff. Forget science. Just eat raw liver, raw testicles. And that's eye-catching. That's something new. It's not that new, but it's different and it's photogenic, and that's how you become famous.
Yep. Especially if those new, like, whatever regimes and stuff appeal to an identity characteristic you want people to perceive you as. Masculinity being the biggest one in that whole sphere is like, oh, meat, raw meat. I'm a man. I'm going to eat meat, and that makes me more of a man. I'm going to hunt and kill and do
elk meat, 100% elk meat, nothing but elk meat. Bow caught elk meat. Poor fucking elks. I mean, if everyone ate the Joe Rogan diet, there would be. I mean, it would take, 6 months for every elk in North America to be dead?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. It's like, God damn. So it's just, there's so many gotchas that are buried in our nature that a dude wants to be validated for being masculine. I mean, not every dude, and if you don't want to, good, great. But a lot of guys do, and simply because that wires us to, be more competitive in the mating market, so girls, a lot of women are going to prefer a guy that's a little bit more manly than somebody that isn't. And guys learn this as they're growing up in the climate and the culture that we have. So they pursue things like that signal that sort of masculinity. And if you are so desperate to do that because you've never been validated by it for one reason or another, you go overboard and you express it in toxic ways. Everything from punching a hole in the drywall to starting random fights with people to more insidious and simple ways like buying a 4x4 truck you don't need because you live in an apartment, but you want people to see you as a manly man. So you got to get a truck, although you just drive it to your cubicle job. And they marketing companies have learned this a long time ago and they'll take advantage of it.
How dare you put everyone in Austin into the same category?
I shouldn't talk. I have an FJ with, it's lifted and crap, but
I used to drive a smart car and I was perfectly happy with it. I'm okay with
I had a Prius.
Okay.
I had a little Prius and I love that damn thing because 50 miles per gallon. I hit like 2 deer in it, like a median in like Connecticut. I drove that from Texas to West Point and back like 4 times.
Well, you're killing animals with it then, so that you're getting your man cred. You're hunting with your car.
I've probably killed more animals with my Prius than most people have.
So, most people aren't going to be able to get formal education. They're not going to be able to go back to university and have professors ask them, what are your citations for this statement? No, that's not a good citation. That's a crappy reference. You can do better than this. Go back and do it again. Right? And I think that was a big part. And I'm very fortunate and kind of lucky to have gone through that and had people, professors tear me a new asshole when I didn't get my citations right. And it teaches you at least to evaluate the quality of your data. But are there any sort of shortcuts that the average person can use that without going back and getting an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree?
I mean, there are. You can learn them by osmosis just by like following more academics and stuff. That the ones that go out of their way to speak plainly. And the rise of podcasting is a great thing for this. You kind of have to stumble into it and luck out and not like you're looking for a science-based podcast and you can find several good ones, but then you can and then you're listening to what is it, Dark Horse with Eric Wein or Brett Weinstein and his wife. And then you're that starts to appeal to you because they know how to work that system. So it's a minefield out there. There's no magic bullet, but it starts with people out there that are trying to add more signal to the noise. And that's one of the things that we want to do. I mean, your podcast is great for that too. So reaching these people. And one of the reasons why I think it's so essential that guys like us do this is because, let's take it a little bit into politics, because a lot of the people that tried to overthrow the government in January 6th.
Antifa, you mean?
Yeah, I was totally Antifa. It's like, it's people that themselves are victims of bad information, and they're angry about the uncertainty and their shifting status in society. And there are always people looking to take advantage of any sort of like simmering rage and apply that to their own ends. So, and so many of those people are in the martial arts community because, of course, it appeals to their sense of control. They want to be seen as masculine and tough guys and badasses. And so they gravitate towards this. And there's so much of an overlap with this that it's almost an imperative, a moral imperative to go and educate these more or less honestly dangerous people, because there are a lot of legitimately dangerous people in the martial arts. There are a lot of goofballs, but there are a lot of guys that, a guy that took a year of jujitsu, an actual real jujitsu class or whatever, is more dangerous in a bar fight than just some knucklehead that, So, I mean, there's almost I see it as a moral imperative to educate these people in a way that they don't become victims of somebody that wants to use their proclivity for this sort of thing for, a little bit rougher lifestyles. towards ends that would be detrimental to their own well-being. So,
yeah. And then, I mean, the ability of a martial arts school to function as a mini cult, or at least the head instructor or the cabal of head instructors to function as cult leaders, has become really quite clear in the last couple of years, most stunningly through, I'll say widespread COVID denial, but also, even if you want to get away from that, through widespread enabling of sexual assaults.
Yep. Yeah, we've covered a lot of those over the years. We called out, especially in the jiu-jitsu community. There's still a few guys out there that are still teaching classes despite having been run out of other academies. They just open up somewhere. They start teaching from their garage. And what is it? You probably want me to steer away from naming people, name dropping people, but
go for it. I'm losing track of the death threats.
And I think he's still running around Houston, who was run out of his academy for trying to groom underage girls, and it's just wait until they're turned 18 and then starting explicitly hitting on them and that sort of thing. And just recently started up teaching again out of his garage or backyard or whatever, and they don't get stripped of their black belts because it's still like a good old boy network, and there's no. But jiu-jitsu community doesn't police itself as well as it could.
Well, I'm not saying that everybody who's ever been accused of sexual assault has done it.
Absolutely.
I can definitely think of examples, even of people that I don't really like, who, where I had the misfortune of having to dig really deep into the accusations and essentially found out that they were mostly baseless and didn't, the amount of evidence wasn't concomitant with the amount of punishment they received in the community. That being said, there's an amazing number of people who just gotten away with murder.
Yeah. I mean, like the one guy whose name rhymes with Roy Lerwin, he's still out there, still running classes and teaching people. Last I heard, I'm not directly in the BJJ community. My background is MMA. So I don't hold any belt because you don't need one for MMA shorts. But obviously it's a small world.
I think I've started giving advice to people who are worried about this, and just before you go train at XYZ Academy, Google XYZ Academy sexual assault, or the name of the instructor and the word sexual assault. Again, that's not saying that everybody who's ever been accused of it is guilty. I mean, I actually believe in cancel culture, but I think people have gotten canceled for the wrong reasons.
There have been witch hunts, and we've seen them come through our forums because back in the day, that was the only place you could go. There were no other outlets for that. So you'll still see old threads come up about stuff like people are doing searches for guys, and I still get emails like, "Hey man, can you take this down from 2006? It's been on there." And then, honestly, we just ignore them because as far as I'm concerned, it's the public record, and we didn't post it. So it's on whoever posted it. That's just how copyright internet law works, according to the lawyers who, have advised us over the years. But yeah, it's still, you have to do your own due diligence, but if it's questionable, nowadays, there are enough jiu-jitsu schools out there that if it's even questionable, just go to one that's not. There's so much competition.
So on your site, you recently wrote, I think it was you, about fire hosing.
Yes.
The idea of just spewing information out so fast that it can't possibly be debunked. I mean, I saw Dwayne Gish pull this off on a debate. So he was a famous scientific creationist. So basically somebody trying to interpret the Bible through a scientific lens, and let's look for proof of the flood, and let's look for scientific proof of the world being 6,000 years old and created in 4004. And it was very effective. Man, he destroyed the professor of evolution that he was going against, because the other guy was there for a good faith argument. And fire hosing is what examples have you seen that come to mind here?
Like I said, I want to steer clear of politics, but I think we can we can point to certain examples within the political sphere that are really obvious, especially entire media outlets that just will throw stuff at you back and forth. I mean, personalities, another, like, there's a lot of pundits out there that use that technique. A squeaky voice little guy. I want to avoid naming because I'm sure he has a ton of fans out there, but no, screw it. Ben Shapiro. He's a big user of that technique. It just, he'll just throw out something back, just talk so fast. And then if you're talking back to him, then you don't get a chance to get a word in. And there's just so many individual points of conversation that you can be like, no, but every single one of them has to be debunked and everyone has to be addressed. It's the old maxim that, was it a lie can make it halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on. And it takes an inordinate amount of effort to debunk a false claim with actual evidence than it does to verify, like, to convince somebody of the truth. And that's why, and again, it goes back to the inoculation thing. You have to get away from that level of discourse and go back down to the point where people are processing the information from the beginning, so that they're not. So by the time they get to the guy that's just, throwing out all this nonsense back and forth at rapid fire, they're like, okay, I see what he's doing. I get that. Oh, and like, maybe they even pick up one out of the 10 things that he said. That's absolute nonsense. So I'm going to question everything else that the person's saying.
Yeah. I wish I'd seen more of that. I wish I'd seen more in the last couple of years, somebody going, I used to listen, I don't know, Dr. John Campbell. And then I went and looked at a claim and it was completely patently false. And this made me reconsider the person as a whole. Like, if somebody's lying to you that obviously and misrepresenting data that obviously, it should make you reconsider the other stuff. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything else you're saying is bullshit, but it really should make you take a sober second look at it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, in my opinion, it's one of the things that I harp on personally is that it's a matter of personal individual character and virtue to be able to say, I have had my mind changed on this topic.
Yeah.
Just irrespective of what other people are going to think about it, because we live in a culture that, especially on social media, where you're incentivized to just always be right. And if you're wrong about something, then, oh no, you might lose some followers or something. Who gives a shit? We need to make it a value. We need to normalize it as something to be respected. We can even mix that crap in with masculinity as a thing. Although that's probably, not the best way of approaching it, but whatever gets it through to the heads of the people that need to get the lesson. That if it shows a sort of like intestinal fortitude, a cognitive fortitude, that if you've been presented with better evidence, that you have the strength, the mental strength to say, oh, I've changed my mind about this. And people that do that should be recognized. That should be something that, people get like prestige and status for. Yeah, exactly. And we need to reward that all the time. I mean, I've had people over the years say, oh man, that has changed my mind completely. I have in the last 6 months, publicly and dramatically expressed that I have shifted my opinion on the issue of gun control. Because I mean, up until it has been on sort of a it's been shifting like slowly, but I mean, recent events have dramatically changed my opinion on that. And, I have publicly expressed that because for the longest time, I would be one of the, I hold myself responsible for that. I'd be one of those guys that are making the arguments that, okay, yes, I'm not going to take you as seriously if you don't know the difference between a clip and a magazine. And I would also follow that up with, nor should anyone else, because obviously you don't have a full grasp of the subject matter. Now, my opinions on that subject have changed because obviously I don't want to get too far into those politics, but present circumstances that have recently happened in the state where I live.
Let's just timestamp this for people who might be listening to this in the future. We've come through some horrific mass shootings like Uvalde is the big example. Texas. But I mean, how many mass shootings were there on the last July 4th? I think 4 of them by noon.
Yeah, at least 4. Yeah. And I like I said, I'm a military guy. I'm still in the military, part-time. And I train people on how to use these weapons. I understand their use. The more that I look at the situation, especially with the way the country is going and just culture in general, the best argument against individual firearms ownership is to talk to the people that really want to own the firearms. And it's starting to get scary out there. So I don't know. Like I said, I have changed my opinion on something, and I think we need to find people and raise them up and spotlight them who have shifted their views, because people are so into the gotcha, oh man, you're not part of our tribe, or you're not adhering to this ideological purity test, so you lose your network, your social circles, you lose your friends, the people that have supported you, you lose your validation from people, because people are validated by sharing opinions. And so we need to normalize people shifting their opinions and welcoming them to different lines of thought, especially if those lines of thought are more conciliant with objective reality. So,
yeah. I mean, you see some welcoming of that. There's always the liberal who then became the Fox News darling by I used to be a leftist, and now I think that, blah, 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 10 talking points on the right. And the other way, sort of on the left, you do have, hey, we'll welcome you with open arms. So there is a sort of a living to be made being a spokesperson for the reformed view changer.
But
I don't think that's really what we're, that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about, people talking about
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, just ordinary people in conversation, people that because when it happens down at a micro level, it's so it's much more important than the people that are that have the platform, that kind of thing. Because those people are going to reach people, but the more people that we normalize it with locally, the better chance we have of making it a broad cultural norm of something. Is you're able to change your mind, and you have a better grasp of reality, so we can work together.
And it doesn't make you any less of a man. It makes, if anything, it makes you confident enough or it demonstrates enough confidence in, masculinity was the topic earlier. You're confident enough in your masculinity to be able to say, man, we'll take it back to the martial arts. This is how I used to do the armbar, and it kind of worked, but man, there's so much of a better way to do it. I was wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think that has never I've never gotten any negative feedback from them. But then again, I rarely say, this is the way to do it. You must do it this way. This is the only way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. When prestige is on the line, we're on some level still wired towards social status to seek that. And we're afraid of losing it because everybody's kind of running a routine in the back of their heads. Like, where do I fall in this pecking order? No matter what room they're in, if there's more than one person and there's some subroutine in the brain trying to, assess how that plays out and where they fall in the hierarchy. And so if we can just take the component of being right all the time and just divorce that by nurture versus nature, we can we can just subvert that whole useless legacy bit of wiring in our systems. And so I think it's something like I said, we need to make it a cultural norm, and it's really, that's going to be an uphill battle. I'm not going to be able to win that. It's probably not going to happen in my lifetime, but it's every drop in the bucket helps.
Yeah. Well, we're beginning to crystallize Frost's 10 rules for life. Number one would be extraordinary claims, we're just cribbing them. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Second one is admit when you're wrong or admit when you've been wrong. It makes you more manly. We're not going to give away the farm. We're not going to tell everybody what the entire book is going to be, but what are some other rules that are going to go into your 10 rules for life book?
My number one is, and this has several sub rules on it, I'm actually writing a book on this, is always argue with idiots. Really? People say don't argue with idiots, but people who don't argue with idiots just allow idiots to proliferate. And let's be honest. Everyone on some topic and on a lot of topics even is an idiot. So
Sure.
I'm not saying idiot as like with hostility. I'm saying idiot as in there is an opportunity to learn better. Now, sometimes you can't convince the idiot. And so when you argue with the idiot, this is the point that I make when in that context. When you argue with an idiot, you have to identify, okay, am I going to convince this person? No. Okay. Then you want to do it for the audience because argue with the idiot, it's not going to change that person's mind. But if you're arguing in front of other people, then you have the bystanders that might not know all the subject. You have to do it in a way that they learn something from it and just use that person as a punching bag. So
I've done a lot of that in the last couple of years, but then I also get so exhausted that, and I also, I get concerned about by engaging with somebody, I am allowing them to hijack my platform and I am allowing them to reach a wider audience. So, so I do engage sometimes and I just sometimes like block and, be gone, get the fuck off my site, get the fuck off my social media feed.
If nobody's getting anything out of it. Yeah.
But I am worried about that hijacking of my platform to just spread misinformation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's no like magic way of doing it. You just kind of have to feel out the cases. Now, some idiots are better at their shtick than others. So you gotta walk a thin line. Some people have their massive followers that are going to believe whatever comes out of their mouth, irrespective of how close that is to reality. And then some people are just, there are better punching bags than others. So if you want to demonstrate your technique, you got to find the right uke, you got to find the right sparring partner. So, yeah, it's a subtle art. So it's like grammatic, verbal, cognitive, ideological jujitsu. So
you're writing a book on that?
Yeah, it will be. I'm in the outlining process right now, and I've got a couple pages basically. But yeah, it's going to be titled "On Arguing with Idiots." So
okay.
Just honestly, I mean, because it's a book that needs to be written to help people on social media, but also because I want to be able to tell people that I wrote the book on arguing with idiots. So
that's very clever. Have you written any other books?
No. I've been like so busy with the website. We actually got 501c3 nonprofit status semi recently. So we're actually a charitable foundation. So I mean, we're not like out there soliciting donations or anything like that, but we're trying to ramp up our work in just inoculating people, providing people the skills for self-defense against bullshit. So and we're going to see where that goes organizationally, but I just have so much on my plate.
Yeah. If there's any ray of hope in this gigantic mess that we're in, it's that there is a new generation of science communicators.
Yes.
Many of whom I've tried to get on my podcast and many of whom I follow on social media who are just doing such a good job of it.
Yeah.
And, they're not doing interpretive dances on TikTok, but they're doing everything but. And
I've seen those too. So some of them are okay.
Yeah. Interpretive science dances?
Yeah, there's a couple that are out there they're doing it sort of tongue in cheek, as like a couple younger women trying to but then the message is like absolute it's like get the damn vaccine, that kind of thing. So I don't get that. I have aged. I am an old fuck, so I have aged past that content. There's no Bullshido representation on TikTok and probably never will be.
We'll do a stitch. You put out a dance, and I'll stitch you on my TikTok.
Oh God, nobody wants to see that.
We'll launch you.
Yeah, we'd collapse the platform.
There's a lot of stuff that can be done on there that has nothing to do with dancing. There's the amount of history content that I consume. History, like you look at my feed, probably it's 1/3 history, 1/3 martial arts, 1/3 science, and 1/3 dancing girls in bikinis. Yes, I know that doesn't add up to 100%. I haven't done the exact analysis of what the TikTok algorithm thinks I want, but yeah, there would be a role for you if you speaking in pithy 30 second to 3 minute content for sure, and it might work out really well for you.
I am familiar that there are people out there that are kind of doing the debunking of the stuff, and in humorous ways and great. And I wish I knew more about them so that I could like shine a spotlight on them and give them the recognition they're due. It's not an ecosystem I've ever found myself in getting into. I see that so many people are. So whoever's out there doing it, please, if you want some support or boosting, let us know, and we'll give you, we'll expose you to all the knuckleheads that follow us.
Well, let's boost the platforms that you do have. Obviously, you got the site bullshido.net.
Yep. Yeah, and the forums on the website are completely revamped, and they're more modern compared to the old school internet forums that they were kind of a pain. But they're slick, they're awesome. I mean, they're not going to be as like great as Twitter or Facebook, because we've got what? Oh God, I don't even know how many people that are on there. So. I'm underselling this, but yeah, it's a wretched hive of scum and villainy, and it's great, and the people on there are argumentative, and everybody's a damn porcupine. But if you like that environment, please come check them out. Bullshido's on Twitter at Bullshido, and Facebook sort of, but Facebook's a dying platform, so get off that website. It's terrible.
You're also pretty active on your personal Twitter.
Yeah, I am, but I mean that's if you just want some, random musings and sanctimonious nonsense, and follow me. But I don't know, man. That's just for my own amusement and to bounce ideas out there and see what resonates and what doesn't. And I encourage people to say, "Oh, hey, yeah, I don't think that's good," and then I'll like, "Okay, well, let's have an exchange about it," because I don't know. Maybe I'm wired weird, but I'm not trying to be recognized for having like these genius ideas. I just want I want to exchange ideas with people and spar with them. I want that. I want that back and forth. I want somebody to say, "Hey, yeah, no, you're, that sounds kind of full of shit, buddy." And I'll be like, "Okay, well, all right, let's do this. Let's tell me how." Plus I also use Twitter. I'm still trying to track down Alex Jones and, James Lindsay. I have a standing challenge out to fight him. He's got me blocked, but I've called him out and he sicked his followers on me. It was hilarious. But yeah, he still claims to be a martial artist, and he tries to bully trans people. And I really want to kick his ass.
They're all martial artists now. Russell Brand is doing jiu-jitsu. It's the end of the world.
Oh God. Yeah. Oh, I don't know if I'd want to roll with that guy. He does not look like he washes his gi.
Well, you'd come away with ringworm, scabies, and monkeypox, but I'm sure you'd tap him out in the short term. You would win the battle, and you'd ground and pound him into oblivion, and then he would win the war.
Yeah.
How exactly did you get monkeypox in your ear, Phrost? No, I swear it was jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm still waiting for the first transmission of monkeypox in the jiu-jitsu community. It's coming. It's gonna be the next ringworm.
Once it hits, it's going to be everywhere, because, I mean, let's be honest. Some of those guys don't. I mean, hygiene's questionable as it is, and you're rubbing up on people. That was oh God. I don't want to relive the pandemic, but man, I have so many battles just explaining to people. Yeah, hey man, maybe don't go a hobby where you're like breathing into each other's faces and sweating into eyeballs and stuff. Maybe just chill.
Or if you do it in smaller groups. Or test. There's, I mean, I still get accused of you just want everybody to hide under your bed. And no, I'd like people to drive down the road, kind of following the speed limit, not being drunk, and wearing a seatbelt. So in a pandemic setting, that would be maybe testing before you go to training in smaller groups.
Yeah.
Don't train when you're sick.
Social pods of people,
ventilate the crap out of your training spot, your training space. So,
yeah, I mean, when I try to explain that to people, I've got one.
You just hate freedom.
Name. Well, one big name jiu-jitsu guy, I think out of New Jersey. I'm not going to name names. I don't even remember because I don't care anymore. But he called me an autistic lab coat for trying to get to this. And I was like, okay, I've never heard that one, but yeah, for just saying, man, be responsible. If you guys want to lock yourselves into your school for 6 months and train with just each other, cool, do it. But just stay out of the community. So, but whatever.
Okay. You've got to work on your end of podcast pitch, because you've also got a podcast, and people listening to this podcast could be interested in your podcast.
Nah, it's terrible. Don't listen to it. Whatever. It's called The Art of Fighting BS, but we don't keep up with it as often as we should. So episodes come out every few weeks. It's not on a regular schedule.
It's still more frequent than Dan Carlin, so you're doing good.
Oh, I love that guy, though. I love that guy.
Yeah. Best podcaster on the internet. Okay, everybody, unsubscribe from my podcast. Unsubscribe, and don't go to Phrost podcast. Just go buy every back episode of Dan Carlin's Hardcore History podcast that there's ever been, and you will be a better person for it.
I wish I was half as enthusiastic about anything as that guy is about history. I just love that guy.
Yeah, astoundingly good podcaster. Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for fighting the battle against bullshit, nonsense, and misinformation. I think you're part of the new breed of communicators on this topic, and everybody does it in their own way, and maybe we'll move the needle together a bit.
Hopefully. Well, we can only try.